hot afternoon in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim Traoré studied the file on his desk. It contained names of 17 officers, foreign account numbers, encrypted messages, and a coup plan. For 60 days, his intelligence team had gathered evidence, recorded conversations, and documented how foreign agents were trying to take control of Burkina Faso. Traoré checked his watch. The conspirators were planning to move right now, but what awaited them wasn't bullets, but handcuffs. Looking out the presidential palace window, Traoré watched the sun setting on the horizon. The blood-red sky seemed to herald the approaching storm. He clasped his hands behind his back and took a deep breath. Such betrayals weren't new to him. Since he took power, Western intervention had never stopped. "Are we ready, Captain Konate?" he asked, without raising his voice. "Yes, Mr. President," said his loyal intelligence chief standing beside him. "All units are in position. None of the traitors will escape." The air in the room felt heavy, charged with the weight of what was about to unfold. Captain Konate had been by Traoré's side since the beginning, one of the few men he trusted completely. Traoré returned to his desk and played the audio recording. Though it was difficult to listen, he knew every word by heart. "The operation begins at midnight. We'll stop Traoré's convoy at the North Gate. Our French friends have helicopters standing by. After the job is done, everyone will find $50,000 in their accounts. If we fail, the men in Paris will provide us safe passage." The voice belonged to Colonel Diallo, a comrade who had fought alongside him for 10 years, shoulder to shoulder against terrorists. Now he was ready to sell his country for foreign money. Traoré remembered their last mission together, just 6 months ago. They had rescued a village from insurgents, sharing water from the same canteen as villagers cheered around them. Diallo had seemed so genuine then. Intelligence Chief Konate said quietly, "Mr. President, why are you so calm? These men are planning to kill you." Traoré slowly sat down and looked at the photograph on his desk. The smiling face of Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader. Africa's Che, a brave soldier killed for Western interest. "Because justice, not anger, is needed right now," said Traoré. "My life is not important, Konate. This country's independence, the dignity of our people. That's what truly mattered." He ran his fingers over Sankara's photograph. The man who had changed the country's name from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, land of incorruptible people. The irony wasn't lost on him. There was a knock on the door, and Special Forces Commander Major Ouedraogo entered. His face was shining with sweat. "Mr. President, they're moving. Colonel Diallo and his men are preparing their weapons. They've left the northern barracks." Traoré nodded. "Begin the operation." In an instant, everyone sprang into action. Phones rang, radios crackled. Presidential guards silently took their position. This was the culmination of an operation planned with months of patience. Outside, the cicadas sang their evening song, unaware of the human drama unfolding. The city of Ouagadougou continued its normal rhythm. Street vendors closing their stalls, families gathering for dinner, children playing in courtyards. Traoré watched from the monitors. Raids were being conducted simultaneously at military outposts, barracks, and secret meeting points. On one of the screens, Colonel Diallo and 4 officers were seen approaching the back entrance of the palace, weapons in hand. Tension and determination were evident on their faces. "For Burkina Faso," Traoré whispered. On the screen, the area suddenly filled with loyal guards. The coup plotters were surrounded. Weapons dropped to the ground. The shock on Diallo's face was captured by the cameras. The operation was completed without a single shot fired. In another location, Captain Moussa, who had been Traoré's classmate at Military Academy, was arrested while trying to access the national radio station. He had been carrying a pre-written announcement declaring Traoré's removal. Hours later, with the first light of dawn, Traoré stood at the military training ground. Before him, 17 officers knelt with their hands cuffed. All their ranks had been stripped. The Burkina Faso flag waved behind them. Its colors, red, green, and a yellow star, seemed more vibrant than ever against the early morning sky. Cameras began recording everything. This would be not just a punishment ceremony, but a message to all of Africa. Traoré approached them, his steps firm and determined. He wore a simple military uniform, no special insignia or decorations. He wanted nothing to distract from this moment of truth. He stopped and looked at the conspirators. None could make eye contact. "What brought you here?" he asked, his voice filling the entire area. Money? Promise of power? Or is it because you're simply cowards? Colonel Diallo raised his head, fear and shame in his eyes. Mr. President, I am no longer your president, Traoré said harshly. I am the people of Burkina Faso, and you have betrayed your people. The words hung in the air, cutting deeper than any physical punishment could. Around them, loyal soldiers stood at attention, their faces a mix of disappointment and resolve. Many had served alongside these traitors, shared meals and stories with them. He extended his hand, and an assistant gave him a thick file. Traoré opened it, the pages catching the morning breeze. Colonel Diallo, on June 12th, you met with Captain Laurent from French intelligence at a hotel in Paris. You were offered $200,000. You accepted. Diallo's face paled. Nobody was supposed to know that. It was impossible. His eyes darted around, perhaps looking for the leak, the person who had betrayed their plot. Captain Ouattara. In the past 2 months, 145,000 euros were deposited into your Swiss account. The source of the money, through 5 different shell companies, is a special fund connected to the U.S. State Department. Every name, every figure, every secret meeting, all were documented. The traitors' faces had turned white. How had they been so closely monitored? Traoré continued down the list, methodically exposing each conspiracy, each betrayal. Traoré closed the file and turned to the crowd. Soldiers, journalists, and millions of Burkinabe watching the live broadcast. The cameras captured his face, calm but resolute. A leader forced to confront the cancer within his own ranks. Look, my friends, he said, raising his voice. These are the tools of those who want to continue exploiting Africa. Our brothers, our sons, bought with money, manipulated with fear, used for foreign interests. Angry voices rose from the crowd. Mothers who had sent their sons to the army with pride now wept at this betrayal. Veterans with battle scars from fighting for independence shook their heads in disbelief. Traoré raised his hand, and a hush fell over the assembly. But today, we are sending a message to them and their master. Burkina Faso is not for sale. Africa's dignity is not negotiable. And betrayal always comes with a price. The sun was now directly overhead, illuminating the sweaty faces of the soldiers. Heat waves rose from the parade ground, but nobody moved, transfixed by the unfolding drama. Traoré approached the conspirators. Some flinched, perhaps expecting physical retribution. Instead, he spoke in a voice so soft, the microphones barely caught it. We will not kill you, he said, because we are not like them. Justice is more valuable than revenge. The words seemed to confuse the traitors. In the logic of coups and counter-coups, blood usually answered blood. This restrained response was unexpected. With a signal, the guards brought the conspirators to their feet. They stood unsteadily, some still not believing they had been caught. These men, said Traoré, turning to the cameras, will be tried openly and fairly. Evidence will be shown to the public. Foreign accounts will be frozen. And the world will see that Africa is no longer sleeping. Africa is awakening and taking its destiny into its own hands. As the traitors were being led away, phones began to ring. Urgent requests for meetings were coming from Western embassies, international organizations, and foreign press. But Traoré was only looking at his people. This is just the beginning, he said quietly to his assistant. The real storm is about to break, and he was right. Within hours, statements began coming from France, America, and other Western powers. They expressed concern, hoped for human rights protection, and respect for democratic processes. Traoré knew this diplomatic language well. What they really wanted to say was, release our puppets, or economic sanctions, media attacks, and perhaps worse, await you. But these threats no longer worked. The old playbook of intimidation and economic pressure was losing its effectiveness across Africa. 2 days later, Traoré addressed the nation. This time he appeared before the people in full military uniform, with medals on his chest. The ceremonial dress was unusual for him, as he typically preferred simple attire, but today required the full weight of his office. He stood in Sankara Square, named after the revolutionary leader whose vision continued to inspire the nation. Thousands had gathered, not bussed in or coerced, but drawn by genuine interest in their country's future. My Burkinabe brothers and sisters, he said, fire burning in his eyes. I want to ask you a question. Who does Africa's wealth belong to? Our gold, our uranium, our diamonds? Whose right are these? The crowd responded as one. Ours. Our lands, our water, our future, who should control these? Ours! The response was even louder, echoing off the buildings surrounding the square. Traoré spread his arms wide, embracing the crowd symbolically. He didn't need notes or teleprompters. These words came from his heart, formed over years of watching his country struggle under foreign influence. Then why are we still hungry? Why are we still poor? Why are others still getting rich from our resources? Silence fell over the square. Everyone knew these bitter truths. Mothers clutched children who should have been better fed. Young men stood with calloused hands and empty pockets despite working in gold mines owned by foreign corporations. Because, Traoré continued, his voice dropping to ensure the crowd leaned in, listened carefully, some are selling us out from within. Some are offering their own brothers, their own mothers, their children's future to foreign powers. On the screens erected around the square, images of the arrested conspirators, seized foreign money, and encrypted messages began to be displayed. Look, said Traoré, pointing at the screens. This is what betrayal looks like. This is how the colonial mindset works. While we sleep, they make plans. While we work, they steal. While we fight for freedom, they report to their master. Then, copies of French and American intelligence documents were shown on the screen. Operation names, code names, budgets, targets, the whole world watched in astonishment. Such evidence was rarely exposed so openly, especially by a sitting head of state. How do you think we obtained these documents? Traoré asked, smiling slightly. Because now we have eyes too, we have ears too, and most importantly, we have minds too. Laughter rose from the crowd. The tension had eased. This wasn't just defiance. It was empowerment. The knowledge that their government was capable of sophisticated intelligence operations, that they weren't simply victims waiting to be saved or exploited. Traoré's voice grew stronger, carrying to the furthest corners of the square. The coup plotters are now in prison, but their masters are still safe, sitting in their luxury offices. I am sending them a message. Your days are numbered. The era of exploiting Africa is ending. We are not like your fathers. We are not afraid. We do not bend. And most importantly, we do not sleep. When his speech ended, not only Burkina Faso, but the entire continent was echoing with his words. Messages of support were pouring in from Mali, Guinea, Niger, even distant Angola and Mozambique. People had taken to the streets in capitals across Africa, celebrating Traoré's speech and demanding similar accountability from their own government. In diplomatic circles, emergency meetings were convened. The exposure of Western intelligence operations presented a significant problem. The betrayal attempt had failed, but this was just one stage. The real struggle was just beginning. The struggle against the colonial legacy for a free and independent Africa. As night fell, Traoré returned to the presidential palace. Despite the victory, he felt the weight of responsibility more heavily than ever. The path ahead would be difficult. Foreign powers would not simply accept this challenge to their influence. He walked through the corridors, nodding to guards who stood a little straighter, a little prouder after today's events. In his office, he reviewed security reports and briefings from border outposts. The country remained calm, but vigilant. Traoré stood on the palace terrace that evening and looked at the horizon. Sankara, he whispered, remembering the old leader. Today we took one more step for you, for your vision. That night, the stars in Burkina Faso's sky seemed brighter than ever. In the days that followed, the international response intensified. Western media outlets began questioning Traoré's legitimacy, calling him a military dictator and a threat to democracy. Economic advisories were issued, warning against investments in Burkina Faso. Behind closed doors, sanctions were being discussed. The French embassy reduced its staff, citing security concerns. The American ambassador requested an urgent meeting, but was told the president was reviewing agricultural projects in rural areas. A polite diplomatic rebuff. But inside the country, something unprecedented was happening. Citizens organized volunteer patrols around military installations, determined to protect their president. Women's groups started community watches. University students formed information brigades to counter foreign propaganda. In markets and cafes, on buses and in homes, people spoke openly about colonialism, economic exploitation, and sovereignty. A week after the failed coup, Ibrahim Traoré made another bold move. He called a press conference, inviting journalists from all over the world. The Western reporters expected apologies, perhaps a softening of his stance after days of international pressure. The press conference was held in the National Assembly building, a structure built during colonial times but now repurposed to serve African democracy. Foreign correspondents filed in, notepads ready, cameras rolling. Instead of backing down, Traoré brought in boxes of evidence. Financial records, communication logs, weapons with serial numbers traced to European manufacturers. He laid out, step by step, how the coup had been orchestrated from abroad. "These are not accusations," he said calmly. "These are facts, and facts cannot be sanctioned or embargoed." A BBC journalist raised her hand. "Mr. President, France has denied any involvement in these alleged coup attempts. How do you respond?" Traoré smiled slightly. "Of course they deny it, but the signatures on these documents belong to officials in their government. The money trail leads to their banks. The weapons bear their manufacturing stamps. Should I believe their words? Or the evidence?" The evidence was overwhelming. Photographs showed Western officials meeting with the conspirators. Bank transfers linked foreign governments to the coup attempt. The world watched in stunned silence as decades of covert operations were exposed in broad daylight. An Al Jazeera reporter asked, "Are you declaring yourself anti-Western, Mr. President? Is this a shift toward other global powers?" "We are not anti-West," Traoré clarified. "We are pro-Africa. We want partners, not masters. Investors, not exploiters. Friends, not colonial shadow." By the end of the press conference, the narrative had shifted. Questions were now being directed at Western governments, not at Traoré. The aftermath transformed not just Burkina Faso, but sent ripples across the continent. Young leaders in neighboring countries began speaking out more boldly. Citizens demanded transparency in mining contracts and foreign agreements. Ibrahim Traoré, once dismissed as just another military man, had become a symbol of a new African awakening, not through grand speeches or revolutionary slogans, but through something more powerful, the simple act of exposing the truth. In the weeks that followed, the economy faced challenges as promised. Some foreign companies withdrew investments. Import costs rose as traditional trading partners imposed subtle barriers, but new partnerships formed as well. African nations increased trade with each other, reducing dependency on former colonial powers. As for the conspirators, they faced justice as promised. Open trials, international observers, due process. The system that Traoré was building wasn't based on revenge, but on accountability. 3 months after the failed coup, Ibrahim Traoré visited a small village near the border with Mali. No entourage, no press, just a leader wanting to connect with his people. Under a massive baobab tree, elders gathered to greet him. "My son," said an old woman, taking his hands in hers, "we have lived through many leaders, many promises, but you brought us something different. You brought us truth." Traoré sat with them, listening to their concerns. Water scarcity, school supplies, medical needs. These were the real issues, far from the geopolitical chess games played in foreign capitals. A young boy approached shyly, clutching a handmade drawing. It showed Traoré standing tall, with the words "Burkina Faso Forever" written in careful letters beneath. "What is your name?" he asked the child. "Thomas," the boy replied, "after Sankara." That evening, as Traoré prepared to return to the capital, his phone rang. It was Captain Konaté, his intelligence chief. "Mr. President, we've intercepted new communications. They haven't given up. New agents have entered the country. New plans are being made." Traoré wasn't surprised. He knew this struggle would continue for years, perhaps decades. The forces arrayed against African sovereignty were patient and resourceful. "Keep watching, Konaté. Keep listening. And most importantly, keep informing our people. An informed citizen is our greatest defense." As his convoy drove back through the dusty roads, Traoré looked out at the landscape. The fields where farmers worked, the schools where children learned, the markets where life continued in all its vibrancy. This was what he was fighting for. Not power, not personal glory, but the simple right of his people to determine their own destiny. The battle against betrayal had been won. The war for true independence continued, and Ibrahim Traoré was ready.